This is my life in 10 decades, from 1926 to 1936. I was born July 26, 1926, at Mercy Hospital in Denver, Colorado, to Francis Zimmerly and Harold Melvin Webster. My older brother was 7 years older than I. Webby was his name, or Harold Jr. We used to call him Junie. Bill was 3 years, Gene was 3 years older than I, and Bill a year and a half older than I. But we lived in a rather small house, but adequate, in Park Hill at 1937 Grape. We had, first of all, in the living room of the house, we had a radio, which is in a cabinet with four legs. We used to huddle around the radio and listen to the news, or Kay Kaiser, or Little Theater off Times Square, or the Hit Parade, or various programs that were available. Of course, Daddy would always have the first choice. We had a fireplace and a piano. Three of us took piano lessons, Webby, Gene, and I. Gene and I took from Augusta Zista, of all things. And then the next teacher was Hazel Kramer. Webby was a natural at the piano. He could sit down and play just about any jazz that he wanted to. He was very original and very talented. Bill played the violin, but not very long. But also in the living room, we had a fireplace and then a piano. And in the living room was a formal table. Mother used to step on the pedal or the buzzer on the floor if she wanted the maid to come for any special reason. We didn't have a maid very often because it was during the Depression. So that was something I always remember. Gene and I shared a bedroom. Bill and Webby shared a bedroom. And downstairs, when we had a maid, she would be next to the laundry room where we had a scrub board and a wringer and an old heavy iron, which is very difficult to use. We had a ping pong table just big enough to fit in the room. I'll never forget the furnace. It was huge, big, round, rumbly thing that would scare me every time I'd go downstairs. Then in the backyard, which was separated by a chain link, Mother had a garden and her pergola, or pergola, however you want to pronounce it. And it was just a middle of a wooden structure with grapevines growing at the top and seating bench on either side, which was a nice place to sit and enjoy the garden. The playground was just big enough for the swing set. I remember swinging just as high as I could, pointing my toes towards the kitchen window where Mother would probably be. And I would say, "Coming in your window." We had a dog named Buster. He was half bullhound and half bloodhound with a short, little waggly tail. Sweet dog. Buster had a doghouse outdoors where he stayed all the time. He was not allowed in the house except on the stoop before the stairs leading up to the kitchen. He was a sweet dog and would always meet me at the back fence by the alley when I'd walk up the alley, walking home for lunch. I walked home for lunch every day. And then again after school He would be there to greet me when I came home. In front, we had a terrace, which I thought was rather steep, but now it looks like hardly anything at all. We used to play King of the Hill, and the neighborhood children would come over and join us as well. We also jump roped and played jacks and rode bikes and skated. Sometimes we'd roller skate all the way to down Montview Boulevard to Colorado Boulevard, where there to the city park. We wouldn't cross Colorado Boulevard, but we at least were there. But that was always fun. So the neighborhood children, there were just usually one or two children in each family. They didn't have big families like our four. Shirley Van Studford was one of my very dearest friends. And she had the most beautiful dolls and toys and satin ribbons for her hair. I just sort of hemmed and hawed. I thought that was wonderful. Across the street was George Saxton, that was Bill's friends, and he would have a pop stand every summer. Also, he had quite a collection of big little books, which were 6 by 6 by 2. So we spent hours looking at those. Across the street was a friend, Kilborn, Claire Kilborn. Her father was a colonel, and she was adopted, but he was very, very strict. Then, that about, I had neighbors, we played together an awful lot. It was fun. One time, I was invited to Ruthie Wireman's house, which is a few blocks away. She called and wanted me to come play circus. So I thought, well, I guess we're going to play circus. I can wear my ballet slippers. But I knew that Mother said I'm not to wear those out other than ballet. And I disobeyed, and I paid for it. Because when we were playing circus, I stood up on a ledge about 3 feet. And I thought, oh, I can, if I'm in a circus, I can make a cartwheel, turn a cartwheel. I did so and came down on my arm and broke it. Nobody was about, and I walked home holding my arm. Didn't hurt, but I was really scared. So I walked home. Just as I got home, Mother pulled up in our old brown Packard car. She had been shopping, and so she rushed me to the doctor's, of course. And the minute I put my arm down on this cold x-ray plate, that's when I started crying. That's the only thing that bothered me. But it was fun having a cast with all my friends' signature on it. But I sure learned a lesson. Mind you, Mother. So we had lots of friends, and I remember so many names of my friends. One evening when Lori wanted me to be interviewed, I was thinking of all the friends that I used to know, and I remember teachers' names and my friends' names. It's missing one by one. And I thought, isn't that strange that I remember those names even easier than I do the ones that I have made recently. One was Cyril Chukovich and Ranella Ridley, and some of the oddest names that you ever heard. I remember one wonderful teachers. There were 2 kindergarten teachers. One was Miss Smith and one was Miss Webster. Of course, that was my maiden name. I remember my art teacher, Miss Downing. I just loved her. She was beautiful. Miss Muster was my English teacher. And the 6th grade teacher I had was Miss Watts. and I was scared of her. She was pretty strict. But other than that, why, uh, I was fine. Eric Haas, Haas, was our history teacher, and it was during the time of the Nazism. And I remember he once said, Nazis are naughty, Nazis are Nazis. And of course, we got a big chuckle out of that. But we were introduced to the war and how devastating it was. So strange to think of war, and it seems so far away that we really weren't that saturated with the news as young people. So anyway, the things we used to do, took piano lessons, dancing lessons from Martha Fry, who lived right across the street from us, and swimming lessons. Daddy belonged to the DAC, and I would either hop on the bus or Mother would take me to my swimming lessons there. I actually, um, so that's all as far as the lessons are concerned. Uh, I'm trying to think what's next here. Uh, we had, oh, some of the things that uh, during the Depression we really didn't do a whole lot of uh, traveling and that sort of thing. But whenever we'd visit Grandmother Webster or Grandmother Zimmerly, we would always, usually Sunday after Sunday school, we would visit them. But when we went to Grammy Zimmerly's, it was close to the Bluebird Theater. And when we drove home, the four of us would hold our breath, hoping that Daddy would stop and take us to the Bluebird Theater for a movie. We never knew, we never asked. We just sat there and was hoping that we could do it. If he found a parking place, that was a possibility. If he didn't, we'd just go on home, forget about it. So, and Grandmother Zimmerly used to make her own homemade noodles, which I do now, or I have done. And when I stayed with her on Sunday afternoon, just to keep her company, she would fix strawberry shortcake, which was wonderful. My grandfather was Julius Zimmerly, and he had a restaurant downtown called the Downtowner. My favorite meal when I would go in once in a while was liverbush sandwich and a daub of ice cream, vanilla ice cream. That was wonderful. I would go back and see all of the uh, uh, employees that were there, but that was the big treat. I loved going there. Ida Zimmerly was my grandmother, and she was a gardener. She won ribbons for her peonies, her daisies, her iris, and she gardened until she passed away in her 80s. She had a two-story house on 1321 Steel, and I don't know how she managed, but she did. And she uh, was just peppy. She was real small, tiny little thing, like Mother, and had an accent. And I asked her how she was. She said, "Oh, so so." That was usually the answer, but she was in good health. Grandmother Webster lived in North Denver near Elitch's, and once in a while they would take me to Elitch's, just to watch the dancers and the ballroom dancers and all, and that was funny. Going back to Grandmother Zimmerly, I remember when we rode in their old Tin Lizzie car, Grandmother would hold my dress or sash or whatever, because the three of us sat in front. The windows would roll open, and that was it. That was it. but she wanted to be sure I was safe. She held on to me very tightly. I'm going back and forth, but these things pop into my mind just spontaneously. So then, uh, oh, back to a friend of mine, Shar Davis, his father, was manager of the Mayon Theater. And I'll never forget when I was about 8 years old that he had a group of Char's friends for a special showing in a small studio of The Wizard of Oz. So here we were seeing this movie that hadn't even been out yet, and it was a big thrill. Every time I see the movie, I remember that us doing this. So, uh, actually, in entertainment, the family, we used to go to City Park for ice skating and Evergreen for ice skating. I remember once at City Park, I was pretty young. I must have been about 6 or 7. And somehow or other, I was left alone at the opposite end of the lake. I knew just the direction where the family was, and I had to cross the lake myself. I became so tired halfway that I just sat down in the middle of the ice to rest because I just knew I couldn't go any further. While I was resting, Bill came to my rescue and escorted me the rest of the way. Mother had hot chocolate with marshmallow all ready for us, so that was a treat. We would have big meals on Sunday, big meaning roast and that sort of thing, after Sunday school. And then in the evening, just for supper, remember Mother used to make waffles or something simple like that. But that was good. So, uh, we, all in all, uh, we just had a wonderful life together. Uh, as I say, the family, the house is small but adequate. I only had a few toys, and one of my very favorite was the Shirley Temple doll. I was so thrilled to have her. I just had Jean and I having shared a room. There just wasn't room for any toys. So we made what was there, and that was fine with us. That's all we knew. But she's been with me all of these years. So, all in all, uh, that's that's about it.